What's our username? It's the two vegans. Right.
No animals were harmed in the making of this podcast. Unlucky for some, lucky for the others. This is episode number 13.
I always wanted to kill that woman who says that. Like, what is so exciting about the number 13?
Well, it's just a thing. There are buildings here that don't have the 13th floor, you know that.
Yeah, my building doesn't.
There we go.
It has a 12, and then it has a 12A, and then it has a 14.
Oh, you actually do a 12A, because I know a lot of places they do 12 and 14.
Yeah, I've never had an unlucky 13th in my life. Wait, take that back.
Yeah, please take that back.
Before something happens to our mics or our laptops or our devices.
So on today's episode, we're bringing back the news segment that we did a few episodes ago. And we're going to do a nice little roundup of different and interesting pieces of news that have happened in the last couple of weeks.
But before that, Chirag spoke to Valerie last week. Valerie is a vegan activist who is based out of Bangkok.
My best friend, who wasn't even a vegan, she was vegetarian because of me. She came across Gary Yourofsky's video somehow on YouTube, and she watched it. And she insisted that I must watch it too. And I sat on it for about a month before I actually watched it. It took me about a week to transition from vegetarian to vegan. And in that week, I also watched a whole lot of documentaries, Cowspiracy, what the hell, you name it. But I was also relieved and kind of really happy to find that millions of people around the world, they are actually saying and fighting for the same cause that I was, fighting as a child before the society actually dumbed me down to believe that I was the only one and therefore I'm powerless and I can't do anything. So it made me feel really empowered. It made me feel really, really strong, and I felt a huge sense of hope. When I saw those videos, I was so hopeful that one day we will be able to achieve this. And something that's very, very wrong, we need to fight it. So from that day onwards, I decided I need to do something. I need to spend my energy and time into becoming active for the animals. Because when you truly understand what veganism stands for, not about giving up this or that or just giving up on animal products, as much as it is about recognizing that they're individuals and then treating them accordingly. So when you make that connection, everything else just becomes super, super easy. Becoming a vegan, it just felt like I came home to my true self. And that just felt really nice. That felt amazing. I felt free.
It's always fun to talk to other vegans, which we've been doing over the course of many episodes. So this was a completely different perspective also because she's based out of Bangkok. Contrary to what people think, Bangkok has actually seen a decent surge of vegan activism as well, or just awareness in terms of veganism. I mean, I think you told me as well, right? Like how you had family that visited and was quite pleasantly surprised with the number of vegan options.
Yeah, so I had visited Bangkok in 2011, and I was a vegetarian then, and I struggled. And everywhere I'd go, people would be like, we have fruit, because of course, Bangkok is known for its tropical fruits. I was like, I don't want to eat fruit for every meal.
If I remember correctly, although we visited Bangkok when I was a kid, we pretty much, like Pizza Hut was our staple.
Exactly, which was going to be my next point, that one fine day I found Pizza Hut in the middle of the city center, and I went over there and they had pineapple on their vegetarian pizza, and I was like, guys, somebody get out these fruits from my bag.
You've just opened up a debate now. Now the pineapple pizza lovers are going to come after you, man.
Just no. Recently, some of my family members went to Bangkok and they were posting pictures of this amazing vegan restaurant in the middle of the city, and it's huge, it's massive, it has so many vegan options, and it just does everything, replicates all of the meat options. And also does a lot of wholesome, nutritious food as well. So I've been looking forward to going to Bangkok again.
One of the interesting things that she had to share with me as well, which is not something we see in this region, but had to do with the Cube of Truth.
Well, I'm one of the organizers of a vegan activism organization called Anonymous for the Voiceless, which is also popularly called AV. We have a chapter in Bangkok. So Cube of Truth is basically a name that has been given to the street outreach, like grassroots kind of activism that we do. We use signs and screens. So screens that we use like laptops or, tablets or whatever, they have footage going on which is played on them. So we use signs and screens, and we stand in a cube formation wearing masks. This is the cube aspect, and then the other is the outreach aspect. So there are some volunteers who'll be out there for outreach or for talking to people. And what we try and do in this is we try to expose the behind the scenes of animal agriculture, like meat, dairy, and egg industries, but also all the other industries that also exploit animals for different reasons, like fur industry or animal testing, cosmetic testing, and leather, and all these industries. So it's really non-violent, it's non-interfering. It's only people who are interested in the footage and are genuinely curious to know why we're there, or why this footage, or where is this from, or they want to know more about it. We start a conversation with them.
Yeah, so Valerie is an active participant and she does this thing very frequently. So yeah, she had a lot of insight.
I think Cube of Truth is one of the best forms of activism, and it actually engages the people. And the best part about this is that people who are doing the activism wear masks, so that their faces are not shown, which means that now I don't know if there is any scientific reason to it or not, but I'd like to assume that people who are walking by the street, they have their laptops open, right? The activists, and on the laptops you've got these gory animal slaughter videos, and their faces have masks, so the person who's walking doesn't associate that with a particular face or a particular person or a particular gender. So the people who are walking by would just now focus on the videos, which I think is great, which is a great idea for activism.
We work with a lot of rules under AV. So in Anonymous for the Voiceless is all about being really professional in what we're trying to do. So one of the things that is important in this is the aesthetics of the cube and the rules around outreaching. So I start with the aesthetics first. So we have to stand exactly in a cube formation, and we must stand upright when we're in the cube. People who are standing in the cube must have a mask. People who are, attending the cube, all the volunteers must wear black, because that is kind of like the code. So we're trying to look as serious as possible, so that then people who walk by, or the bystanders, can take us as seriously as possible, right? So this is one of the things. And same thing is with outreach. We don't want people to think that this is a bunch of crazy people who want to convert you into something that they believe in, right? Because we know from experience that if converting people into veganism was so easy, it would have been done and the world would have been, vegan by now. And if converting was your goal, it would not be the right goal to have. It would just not be. So we're about education. And when you're about education, when you're about letting people know about what is truly happening, when you're actually concerned about the bystanders, when you're actually concerned about the people who come and watch, you're concerned that they have a right to know what they don't know. They have a right to not be lied to, because when you wake up to the truth that all these industries have lied to us for years, and we've just not known about all these things that we're supposed to know, you feel that other people around you should know. So it comes from a place of concern, right? So since it comes from a place of concern and respect, then we don't want to just to increase the number of people that we interact with. We don't want to force anyone into a conversation. So if someone comes to the cube and, or is walking by the cube and they stop, because obviously the footage is engaging, it's very engaging. So that definitely helps us it is the trigger why people stop. We definitely accept that. It's not very mild. It's the truth, and it's the harsh truth. So it's graphic. Let's just say that. But it's the truth as well. So it does help people to stop. So if they have it in them to watch it, and if they stand long enough, we generally tell our volunteers that unless a person stands there for like 60 or so seconds, like about a minute, don't go towards them and try to have a conversation, or don't ask them about how they feel about this footage, and don't try to have a dialogue before that. Because when they're standing there, they're trying to take in firstly what is going on, and they're trying to understand a few things Number one being, yes, of course, what is going on? Number two being, do they really want to stand there and watch it? Right? And we need to allow them that time with themselves to, yeah. So a lot of people, when there different people are different, so a lot of people will be like, they'll just walk by like, oh, what is this? Hey, can you help me out? Can you help me understand what's going on? And a lot of people like very quietly just will keep watching until they feel comfortable to look out and see if someone can help them. Or someone will just keep watching, keep watching, keep watching, and then one of us will then, after a while, an outreacher will approach them and try and have that conversation at the right time, because this is done out of respect. Because we imagine that if we were to be educated about something that we don't know about and it's really important, we don't think that if we were just approached by people, it's like how we feel about the salespeople. And they approach us, even if their message might be right, we don't want to know the message. So if it's forced upon us, we don't want to know. Even if that might be something we really need to know, we just don't want to know because we're just totally like, why are you trying to tell me this? I didn't ask you. Yeah. So unlike other different types of outreach, like other, events that happen where people do, and I'm not saying that's wrong, say, hey, do you have time for 2 minutes? Can you stop and take a look? That's also great, but that is just not the approach of Keep It Truth and Anonymous for the Voiceless. This is really particular about this, and we're really particular about the brand and the things that we support.
Also, I think what was interesting was about the reactions that they get to this and to the people that sort of are the recipients of the Keep It Truth out in Bangkok.
Most people who kind of watch the footage while passing by and realize what it is, and they're not in the position, or they just not ready to have a conversation about this, they don't even stop. But majority of people who stop, who actually take a look, are simply shocked. And then when they watch further, and if they actually watch the whole thing, many of them end up crying on the street. Last time there was this man who was like, yeah, so this stuff, what you're showing, these places, wherever this is happening, of course they are one-off cases and they should be reported to the government and the government should shut them down. It took us about 30 minutes to have that conversation to even be able to convince him that these are not isolated or one-off cases. These are standard practices. This is happening everywhere in the world. This is nothing the government is going to do anything about because this is legal. It's so funny that this connection is real. I was lucky when I went vegan. We already had an Anonymous for the Voiceless chapter in Bangkok. They were really, really small back then and didn't matter. I just wanted to do some street activism because when you learn the truth, you're like, you really want to help the animals. You want to really get active about it, right? If an Anonymous for the Voiceless chapter does not exist in someone's city, it's very, very possible for them to actually take on this role and become the organizer. And it's very easy to organize a group. All you need to do is just get in touch with the international team. It really grows with time. Like back in the day, it used to be just 4 people or 3 people. And now we have volunteers in 20s and 25 and these kind of numbers every week.
So that was Valerie. Big thank you to her for joining us on this episode and having a chat with us. Shopping around in the venue over here at Sesame, which is where we're recording today. These guys are located up in Sunset Mall in Jumeirah 3. They seem to have a lot of fun options on the menu.
Can I have the chickpea and the beef chutney sandwich, please?
All right, so while we wait for your sandwich, did you see this debate about avocados not being vegan?
I did. Because they're so difficult to cultivate naturally, all of these crops rely on bees, which are placed on the back of the
Right,
truck
it's a lot of cross-pollination, forced pollination and everything,
taken
right?
very long distances across the country. What are your thoughts on it?
Especially since the vegan movement has taken a lot of, it's getting a lot of steam, and you're starting to see all of a sudden these articles and topics that, hey, guess what? Like earth-shattering news. Veganism is actually not helping the environment, right? And you kind of see this thing, and I've seen some people share this. Active meat eaters and stuff primarily who kind of are like, you guys are pontificating at us that what you're doing is helping the environment. But for me, this type of news falls in the same category. This kind of thing to say, hey, because avocado and because these vegetarian or vegetable oriented plant-based diet stuff isn't helpful to the environment, the whole vegan diet is rubbish, which I think is like this conflation of an issue which I think needs to be separated.
I think these people who, like I said to you the other day, they're just like lurking behind curtains and waiting for that one opportunity to just jump on, be like, hey, look, you vegan, you are the cause for this destruction on the planet, look what we found. This justifies us eating meat. So I'm not saying that the show whose host Sandy Toksvig made this point that a food like avocado and kiwi and cucumbers are not vegan. I'm not saying that she's lying or she's just not making any sense. We do understand that there's no such thing as 100% vegan. We do understand that certain kind of farming that is not suitable in certain countries, and hence there's water use required for, like, I can't, if I'm eating avocados in Dubai in a desert, then obviously there's nothing natural about it.
Yeah.
But then that then brings me down to the point where a lot of things that we do today in this life, such as use our cell phones, is not natural. It's not what human beings are supposed to do, which kills more bees than avocado plantation would. So if you're a meat-eating cell phone user, I don't think this should be an opportunity for you to jump on the vegans. Maybe you should think this through. Yeah, we understand these are facts. I mean, the best thing to do in terms of sustainability now, and not vegan alone, is that you need to eat what grows locally instead of, because then again, if you're transporting, vehicles are being used, there's air pollution, packaging, all these things happen as well. So it's best to like shop in your organic local farmers markets in your areas, but that's not happening, right? However, that still doesn't justify meat eating.
So I think this is where the conflation of issues starts to happen. So the point being made, of course, is that these fruits, vegetables, they're being branded as not vegan because they're not sustainable, because they involve some level of cruelty there. I mean, in this particular case, for example, the conversations about bees and the fact that, this forced pollination needs to happen across, because avocados are actually not very easy to grow. There's a whole history behind the Hass avocado, which by itself, by the way, is not a natural occurring avocado, right? And it's a modified version of the avocado that happened many, many years ago. So already there's like a lot of, we're not living in exactly a pure world anyway. This isn't the right issue. This isn't the base of the argument's a little flawed for me personally. The reason that some things are vegan and not vegan is because, we are absolutely what are now getting called the subcategory of ethical vegans, right? We're against the killing of animals. We're also against cruelty. Right, and that is the guiding principle for us in a lot of cases where we don't want to eat meat. It's also having an insane effect on the environment, but we don't want to eat meat because we don't think that, we're superior and we get to eat whatever the hell we want. We think that animals, sentient beings that they are, their life shouldn't be taken. It's become very cruel, but life shouldn't be taken, period. I don't think, I mean, for all of us, and I've been asked this question as well in the past, like if we had a sustainable farm next door that was killing only 10 animals in a month or some small number that wasn't factory level slaughter, would I be okay with it? My answer is still no. I would not be okay with that. So I think that that's the guiding principle. And so if that's the guiding principle, then this argument about the environment, to me personally, it's a secondary argument to say, okay, we also should look at sustainability. Of course we should. And I care about the environment. We've had our discussion about plastic and everything else. So of course we want to have that discussion, and we should. I think avocados, by definition, yeah, they're part of the plant-based diet. Can we get sustainable avocados? Can I make sure that I pick organic avocados and avocados that don't involve cruelty or don't involve forced pollinations and keeping bees in captivity? Yes, that will be my goal. But yeah, avocados do get to be classified as a plant-based diet. They don't involve killing an animal.
Here was the most interesting part of this entire video. Sandy Toksvig, quoting her, lots and lots of vegan things are actually not strictly vegan,
right,
is what she said. She
yeah.
did not say they're not vegan.
Yeah.
She just said they're not strictly vegan. Nobody saw that. People just jumped.
Well, remember that we do live in this era where the headline is all that matters.
Yes, of course.
And and beyond that, if we're really going to go beyond the headline, it's the first line, maybe the first paragraph.
And hence we have to do episodes to keep you updated on the real news out there. I just want to say one last thing here, and I just want to actually put it out there to people who don't know the definition, the actual real definition of veganism by the books. Mm-hmm. So I'm just going to read that, and I hope that people do understand it. Veganism is a way of living which seeks to exclude as far as is possible and practicable all forms of exploitation of and cruelty to animals for food, clothing, or any other purpose.
Yeah.
If anybody tells you they're 100% vegan and they do not have any kind of a footprint or part in the cruelty, they're wrong.
Or they're living in some remote village in a disconnected country. We live in this very, very consumer era where today in Dubai we can find vegetables from all over the world. Any person that understands even the simplest bit of logic understands that this stuff was not grown yesterday, it wasn't plucked a few days ago, it has been chilled, frozen or something and transported halfway across the world. Tie this into this other piece of news that was making the rounds this week. It essentially says we have about 12 years to make some serious dietary choices or we would reach the point of no return, essentially.
So the UN has come out and made a landmark judgment that the research that they've held has warned this increase in temperature will lead to overheating, flooding, and other extreme weather conditions that is going to have a massive impact on humanity. And they also mentioned that some of the changes needed to slow the temperature rise are being implemented, but they would still need to accelerate those changes. So we have to act yesterday.
Yeah, and I think we should point out as well that this was a report that was initiated off of the United Nations, an intergovernment panel. There were 91 authors involved, some 6,000 scientific sources. So this isn't just somebody's passing thought in a newspaper. So I'm probably not the best or fair comparison between the previous piece of news and this one directly. But the idea is that their concept or their core argument with regards to that is, 12 years, by the way, considering where we are, there's not enough time to reverse many of the changes. So these changes have to be extremely, extremely drastic. People tend to miss out on the fact that adopting a vegan diet and stuff can actually have a significant impact.
I can just say I'm super glad I don't have children and they will not see the shit that is going to happen in the world.
So the other piece of news that also did the rounds, although this was a little over a week ago, was that Dove came out and said that they were banning animal testing.
Unilever has actually called for a global ban on animal testing, yet they continue testing in China. How is this a global ban?
The problem is with a lot of this news is that they sound great in the headline, but then it's always about drilling down and figuring out really what's really involved here. And that's a much more layered conversation. We have the whole China angle, right? Which is something that, because China's regulations don't allow for it. But I think one of the other things that I also question in this whole story is Unilever is a huge company, it's a huge corporation, multiple global brands. Why is it only Dove?
Yeah, why not Sunsilk and why not all the other cosmetics?
Yeah, I would have been fine if Unilever said, hey, in the next 2 years, we will ban it across all of our brands. I understand as well some of these global conglomerates. I think it's something that Dove pushed, or the organization of Dove pushed for.
Of course, but I think that Dove sales were probably going down, and that's why they decided that they should just do this.
We've had this discussion as well, right? At the end of the day, all of this stuff is demand and supply, right? And you will see big brands like this continue to show these kind of commitments, not necessarily always based on great virtue, but just because people are reacting strongly and in large numbers. For me, at the moment, we are still in that transition era where I'll take the change, provided it's real. I'll take the change.
Yeah, of course. It's obviously good news for the animals that they will no longer be tested, even if it's for that one particular brand. But would I trust Unilever to be an ethical company? No. So I do feel skeptical about it. It's coming from a giant corporation whose ultimate aim is to usually just make money. But Nestle was taking in 200 million gallons of water from a particular water body near Michigan.
Yeah.
But the residents of that state or that little city or town did not have clean water. So I wouldn't trust a giant corporation. However, I do realize the volume that they bring in and the kind of change that they'll bring on a massive level. So that helps the animals eventually. However, they've chosen to get the PETA accreditation and not the Leaping Bunny, which is usually the sign for seeing whether the product is vegan and cruelty-free. Unilever has given a statement on that, saying in terms of why PETA, it's because it's the largest animal rights organization in the world, more than 6.5 million members and supporters. That piece of information does nothing to answer this question. They went on to saying that PETA has recognized Unilever's ongoing work on alternatives to animal testing and its commitment to promoting their adoption worldwide. It will now list Unilever as a company working for regulatory change, which indicates that Unilever conducts no tests on animals unless specifically required by law.
Yeah, but this is the wording. This is the PR wording that tells you that we're not going to talk about certain countries where legislatively they are compelled to do that because we are still going to continue doing business. I don't know what the solution to that is because it's extremely political and legislative and this thing within a certain scope or within a certain country. As you mentioned as well, for a company like Unilever, which has the kind of PR that they do, this becomes this is something that pushes a lot of eyeballs towards such a campaign. And obviously we all know that come January 2019, all of Dove's marketing and Dove's advertisements will make this a focal point.
The image that they're trying to portray is that they care about animals. They think that animal testing is absolutely unnecessary, and they still go ahead and do it in China because that's where the profit is. You have the weight in China to say that I'm withdrawing all my products from here until you don't change the law. And if 3 or 4 giants do that, China will be under pressure to change the regulation. Another pleasant news that we received is that there was a vegan week in the Great British Bake Off show, I think about a month ago. That created quite a furore in the market. The vegans were super excited and the non-vegans were super skeptical.
There was so much anger. I don't know what that was about. We have seen, a lot of these reality cooking shows and chef-based shows and all of this stuff. And they're occasionally doing these weeks around an ingredient. They've done vegetarian weeks and fish weeks and all sorts of things like that. So I don't understand why vegan dessert week was an issue, but it really became one, right?
Why aren't these people angry about vegetarian themes, but they're so angry about vegan? What changes?
I don't know. I think they look at us as being more radical, and therefore, if you're legitimizing a radical diet option, maybe. I don't know what that was.
I think I'm making a meringue or whatever without egg white. A pudding out of plant-based milk, which tastes exactly like your regular pudding. I would be excited to see that. This would help people who are transitioning.
And mind you, just based on so many conversations I've had with so many people over the last few months, vegan desserts are a problem. I've heard this over and over again that we still can't find the right replacements for good vegan dessert, good vegan cakes and stuff like that. It's not like there aren't any dessert options or dessert places that cater to vegan desserts, but the options are very limited, right? And people are still trying to discover the right way to do a cheesecake and the right way to do this thing without, and still keeping it a little bit natural and not overly processed stuff, right?
Well, the fun part about this news is that the judges loved the food, and in several instances going as far as describing it as poetry and saying she could hardly believe it was vegan as it was so tasty. So the judges are not biased there. They're open-minded and happy.
Can I ask you a question here, right? Do you think that a lot of this outrage would potentially not even entirely exist if a lot of these people were made to eat this and not told it was a vegan cake or a vegan burger or vegan something sometimes? You think they would still complain?
No, they wouldn't at all. Yeah. In fact, somebody the other day told me that they tried the Beyond Burger. And they said if they weren't told that it was not beef, they wouldn't have found out. The second that person told them it was vegan, they're like, oh, but the texture is a bit, and
I feel like we keep hearing that. We keep hearing this no, it's actually pretty good, but there was this slight little aftertaste, or I can taste that it's something like a little bad. I think a lot of times it's this tag. It's the tag is the problem. And like you said, if we've got these reality TV chefs and all these aspiring chefs anyway that are making vegan desserts that, if you didn't tell them, didn't know it was vegan, that's a good sign, man.
There was this one contestant on the show called John who said he would prefer a kebab week and he eats animals at every meal over a vegan week. It's funny because kebab-loving John didn't fare so well. His pastry was described as gluey, rubbery, and not wonderfully attractive. And it's just hilarious. You can just see that, because he already had his notions. And when you cook, you got to cook with all your, when I have a bad day and I'm cooking, the food turns out terrible. It just depicts in my food. And whenever I'm happy, I'm drinking a glass of wine and I'm just chilling and listening to nice music and cooking, my food turns out exceptional. I think it was one of those days.
I don't know if it's a mood thing or a wine thing. It sounds like a wine thing to me.
Well, they should have given kebab-loving John some wine then.
Didn't you also find it interesting that somebody reacted to Vegan Week by saying, excuse me, can I have a kebab week? I want to eat kebabs all day. In a reality show where you're being judged about vegan dessert, desserts, by the way. Nobody was forcing you to change your main course. But you have to go outright and be like, here's my placard.
Because if tomorrow you are a chef at a restaurant and you have vegan customers, what are you going to tell them? Sorry, we are the kebab-loving restaurant. Please leave.
People are funny.
So based on the reaction that the Great British Bake Off Vegan Week got, Amazon UK actually launched a vegan baking store.
Ooh.
And now they're putting out all these vegan baking products. And they did some survey and they did some studies and things like that, and they found out that the sales for these plant-based baking goods have increased amongst these shoppers by 100%, and they've mentioned that the coconut butter of a particular brand has risen by 215% and egg replacer by 238%. So haters can hate, meanwhile vegans can bake. Let's move on to what the celebrities around are doing.
I love this segment. We have to make sure we talk about the celebrities as much as we can.
Of course. So closer home, Virat Kohli, the super duper hot cricketer. For me, that's his claim to fame. No. Indians will kill me. Of course, he's a great athlete and a great cricketer. He has now turned plant-based, whereas the headlines read he has turned vegan. Kohli put out a statement last week saying that he has now moved to a fully plant-based diet, and that has made him focus on his game much better, has given him the right strength to play his game. What are your thoughts on it, Chirag?
He's been doing it, I think, for a couple of months, but he disclosed it ahead of a new tournament. His wife, who is a fairly popular Bollywood actress as well, also around the same time has given up meat, so she's on a vegetarian diet now, which is also part of this conversation, and apparently they sort of made that decision together to give up meat. And it's also funny because, I've obviously followed his career for some time. He was sort of sharing like his parents' reaction to when he started playing cricket. And his parents' reaction, he comes from a Punjabi family, right? Like, of course, he says it as a joke, right? But he has mentioned that more than once in interviews that like his parents' biggest issue about him starting to play cricket was how will you eat all the fatty foods that we've been that we want to eat and enjoy, and now you'll be sitting in a corner eating. And then now he's taken that even a step further and given up meat altogether. And in fact, as well, he's gone plant-based entirely.
Yeah, and he was pretty chubby when he had entered the cricket scene, and I liked him more then because now his face is like really lean and fit, and I just feel like he's out of league now. Earlier he felt like, okay, he's still in my league, It's funny because I read this news on one of these Indian news websites, and the first 4 or 5 comments were from Punjabis saying that how is he going to eat the delicious tangri kebab or butter chicken. Like, is that your only concern? Like, the guy plays for your country, cut him some slack.
And he's saying that he's seeing results of it, right? So more power to him, and the more he advocates for it, yay.
So Pamela Anderson, another hot vegan. So now we've got 3 vegans on board. We've got Virat Kohli, Pamela Anderson, and Hital Bhatia.
I have to commend you for saying that with a really straight face.
So Pamela Anderson has now come out and urged Gordon Ramsay to ditch foie gras. Mm-hmm. She has worked in collaboration with our favorite charity, PETA, and she said that the restaurant could easily replace the traditional dish with a vegan foie gras. Oh, do you see it? Not foie gras, but foie gras.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, throughout November. So quoting her, she said, "I'm sure that your restaurant makes a great effort to create a beautiful dining experience, but foie gras is nothing more than a diseased liver produced in a real-life Hell's Kitchen." For people who do not know, foie gras is basically duck liver, and ducks and geese are actually force-fed with metal pipes down their throats so that they can fatten them up and serve them on a plate, only to cost you your own kidney, only to cost you shitloads of money for eating that crap. Interestingly, foie gras is banned in UK and over a dozen other countries, and 2/3 of the British public supports the ban on its sale. Well, I guess well done to Pamela Anderson to come out and make such bold statements, and I can't wait to see Gordon Ramsay's reaction to this. Have you seen that gif of Gordon Ramsay? What are you? I'm an idiot sandwich. What are you? I'm an idiot. Have you seen that Asian lady with 2 slices of bread? I love that. And for our teeny tiny celebrities who are not as popular as Pamela Anderson, the guys who run Bosch, the super amazing recipe website, have now launched 2 books because their first book was a completely smashing hit.
Oh, that's pretty interesting. I didn't. But hey, good stuff, Bosch. Keep at it, man.
Yeah, the guys are cute. Okay, look, Meat Boss says cutting out meat is not the answer to climate crisis. his opinion flies in the face of recent research. There's another celebrity, Cara Corbett, she has overcome alcohol and crystal meth addictions to become a world-class athlete. She's a runner, and she hit 100,000 miles.
Yeah, so that's a quick roundup of different pieces of news. A special thanks to Valerie for joining us on the episode as well.
And a special thanks to Sesame for hosting us. They've been very kind.
Yeah, they were very sweet about this.
They made sure they didn't make any cutlery noise.
I think you were talking about something when your sandwich actually arrived, and she was like so carefully like placing it. It was very nice.
I actually wanted to speak about this one fan mail that we got.
Ooh, almost forgot about that.
Yeah, we have a fan mail.
So a shout out to Stephanie, who dropped us an amazing review. This was after episode 11, where we talked about feeding pets and the whole debate around that. So she was really sweet about, first of all, thank you for giving us a 5-star review. Really appreciate that. But also, she left us a comment based on our episode number 11, where we talked about what vegans feed their pets, and which is quite an interesting debate point. So thank you for your comments on that as well.
Yeah, so please continue giving us your reviews and your comments. We want to know from you.
Yeah, so you can leave us a comment by visiting amaya.fm/2vegans/13 for this episode. Or leave us a review in Apple Podcasts.
Yeah, please let us know how awesome we are. It's been a while since Stephanie messaged.
That's it from us from this episode, and we'll see you very, very soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Ciao.
Keep on keeping on.
You know, when you watch a TV.
When I watch a TV.
What's going on when you watch TV? It's the 13th. I think that's what it is.